others, which is that when we get together, whether it's at meeting up at a park for a play date, whether it's meeting at the beach for a play date, whether it's going out on a double date with our husbands, whenever we sit down, and the dads don't do this, we sit down and we do the same thing, and it goes like this. You know what I'm talking about? I call it the collective sigh. That's my own term for it, because it's sort of like we all come in, we all let it out, and I love that MOPS gives you plenty of time to have your sigh moment. So if you haven't done it, I welcome you to do it now. But I do think it's the universal acknowledgement of all that it takes to get where you are, all that it takes to get to the play date, all that it takes to get to the beach, all that it takes to get at that date night, all that it took for you to get here today, because it's a lot. You got babies, maybe you have other kids. It's a lot to get out of bed, put clothes on, smack on some makeup, and show up here today and spend this time together with your community. And so I'm really grateful that you did all that it took to come here today and to hang out with me and listen to what I have to say, and that you invited me into your space and to be a part of it. So thank you for having me. It's just, it feels like a gift every time I get to talk to a MOPS, so I'm really grateful. So I want to give you the lay of the land. I don't want you to stress out when you're like wondering where I'm going to go with this. And so you know exactly what I'm going to talk about. So the plan is we're going to start with my why. Why does this topic speak to me? Why is it important? Oh my gosh, I didn't know I was up on the screen. That's kind of jarring. Hey, okay. The second is we mom so hard. I'm going to outline 3 reasons why motherhood feels hard. And I know you're like, why are you telling us that? I'll explain why it's important for you to understand why motherhood feels hard when we get to that section, make it really clear for you. The third is the balance myth. Then it's like, okay, here's all the issues. What do we do with it? So what's the now what? I'm going to introduce you to this model. This is the foundation of my book, but I'm only going to go into this one area of trust and do a little bit deeper dive there. So, all right, feel good? All right, the reason why this topic speaks to me, I always start with a confession, and I know I'm not in the right church for confession, but my confession is that I thought I was going to be like the best mom ever. Like, I really had no worry about what type of mom I would be. And let me justify. The reason why is because, number one, I have a master's degree in human development and family science. I don't really know what that prepares you to do in the world, but I assumed it would prepare you to be decent at motherhood, right? Family science? Like, what is family science? I have a PhD in psychology. I feel like that's a skill set that should be helpful in motherhood. My dad has his PhD in psychology. I grew up in that family that does like the family talks, and we analyze things, and we do the stuff. My mom is a good mom. She, like I said, I've done a lot of MOPS. My first one was in my home city, San Clemente, and she came and she listened to me speak. And I'm 41, and my mom is coming to my extracurricular still. So, like, I've got a good mom. And so I felt like I had all the makings of a really good mom. I knew how I was going to do my discipline. I know it's out of fashion now, but I was going to do timeouts. Now we do, what do we do? Time-ins, calming corners. But I thought I was going to do timeouts, and then I'd look our daughter in the eyes. We'd talk about what she did wrong, what she could do better next time, and then we'd like skip off into the sunset holding hands. Like, I had everything laid out. I was going to be the modern day Mary Poppins. You know how she's like this perfect blend of put together and composed, but also fun? And she's respectable, but she's lovable and loving. Like, she's this great mix. So that's what I expected. I went into motherhood, and I had one major oversight. Totally didn't take into consideration the type of child I would have. Temperament didn't cross my mind. Degree in family science, and I didn't think about temperament. Does any of you have a baby? You're like, I know what you're going to say, and it's me. Do any of you have a baby or a child who was born with preferences? Like, they come out having real strong opinions. That was our daughter, Effie. She's 10 now, which is crazy to me. But she was born with preferences and totally not the child I expected to get. I know they say God gives you what you can handle, and I was like, I don't think so. Like, I don't think he got this one right. So she came out with these strong preferences. I didn't feel like I understood what I was doing. I was immediately smacked with this extreme feeling of loss of freedom after kids. I was just not prepared for, like, I didn't realize I'd have to plan out going to the bathroom because I got to bring this baby with me. So many things I did not think about. We also had some just life circumstances. So when she was born, we were living in Florida. Are any of you from the Midwest? Yeah? Just nobody? Nobody? Okay, I'm from Ohio originally. Kansas, yeah. You're probably more Midwest than me. But when you're from the Midwest, when you retire, you move to Florida. Like, that's what people do. So my dad was retired. They moved to Florida. So my husband and I were like, well, we're having a baby. We need help. Let's move to Florida. So we moved too. And 2 months after Effie was born, so we'd lived there 3 months, he got relocated to California. So I had the decision to make of, do I go with him, hang out in temporary housing while he's traveling and going through trainings and doing business meetings? I don't think so. I'm going to stay with my support. So from 2 months to 10 months, I was in Florida. He was in California with periodic visits on the weekends. So you know what happens with a baby, first-time mom, 2 months to 10 months, what's going on? 4-month sleep regression, introducing solids, the changing of the poop. Like, it's all jarring and shocking. And so I was dealing with this on my own. I was spending countless hours up at night on Google, down the blog rabbit hole, trying to figure out how to get some sleep at night because it just felt like I was the only one up in the middle of the night, lonely and breastfeeding and doing all of the things completely on my own. And when we finally met up with my husband, finally all moved to California. She was older, but her temperament didn't change. It just got bigger. And I was like, you know what? I know how to take care of our scary baby. You don't know what you're doing. I got this. And so I pushed him out. And so by this time, I was so lost in motherhood, so overwhelmed. I expected to be good at it. I felt like I was falling short every single day. And I was pushing my husband out and felt bitter, pretty resentful, honestly, burnt out, and totally buried by motherhood. So I knew, okay, I'm in the haze. I feel like it's like a fog in early months, especially those early days, the fog of motherhood. And I knew I don't have the answers. I don't know what to do. But when I emerge from this, I want to help moms navigate their relationships with themselves, with their partners, and with their kids in a more empowered way, because it's all connected. So I did what I always do when I'm looking for ways to help people is I dove into the research. I dove into the blogs, into the research studies, into the books, and to all the things I could find on motherhood. I had been working alongside my dad for 15 years, taking psychological theory and research and translating it into practical tools. And so I was like, I have the skill sets. I'm going to figure this one out. How do I help moms? What's going to help them feel better? And what I came across of what is currently on the market to help moms were tons of lists of self-care strategies. Do you know these lists? Have you found them in your Google searches or your time on Instagram? What's on the lists? So talk to me. Take a shower, hygiene. Call your friends, take a shower, exercise. What else? Drink water. I'm always shocked where it's like basic needs, because we forget in early motherhood, and it feels like it's not enough time for those things. So that's what I found too, these lists of self-care strategies, and it kind of bugged me for a number of reasons. The first reason is we don't need more lists of things to do in the time that we don't have. Moms, we have endless lists of things to do, both written down probably and that we're carrying around in our heads, and when you just give us another list and we can't get to it, we're going to end up feeling guilty and like we're falling short. One more thing I didn't take care of today. The second reason is there's a whole lot of other stuff underneath those lists. There's this assumption when you get a list like that a mom has the time, the space, the resources, and the support to accomplish the things on the list. I talk to moms in my community every day, and a lot of moms feel a lot of guilt around asking for this time and this space. So if we don't address some of these deeper things, how are you going to ever take care of the things on the list? How are you going to do the things that might help you feel better? So I felt like that was missing the mark. And the last was, it's almost all about our physical bodies. Drink the water, take the shower, go for a walk. And our physical bodies are a wonderful vehicle to feeling better and to taking care of ourselves, but it's not the only way. There are plenty of other ways we can care for ourselves that move the needle, that help us to feel better in motherhood, and that are really important, that are neglected in these lists. So I felt like overall, what was missing was this sort of awareness of a struggle that almost every single mom is contending with, especially today in modern motherhood, which is that we want to be really good moms. But we also want to feel good in motherhood. We want more than just child abandonment or self-abandonment. We want something in between. And so I wanted to help moms navigate this differently. So I'm going to talk about 3 reasons why motherhood feels hard. I feel like this is such an important thing to understand because we exist with all sorts of invisible experiences. You know, if like you're having a day and you're like, I don't know why, I just feel off today. Or I just feel burnt out, or I just feel overwhelmed. I don't even know why. Part of what helps to step out of the overwhelm is defining what's going on. When we define these invisible experiences, it empowers us to do something about it. You can examine it and be like, okay, well, I guess it is the way it is. You can revise it, you can ditch it, you can change it. So I feel like when we define why motherhood feels hard, it empowers us to relate to some of these things differently. So I want to go through those with you. And I've put a lot of thought into organizing these. They come out of research. They're like an integration of research. And there are 3 core conflicts that we contend with in motherhood. And they all begin with I. So hopefully you can remember them really easily. So the first is identity. This is the sacrifice of your needs versus the needs of everyone and everything else. There is this sort of messaging that we get living in this society that we absorb over time. And the messaging is, as women, we're told, it's our job to sacrifice for the preservation of our relationships. We have to make our needs small to keep everything else running and going smoothly and to make sure our relationships are taken care of. When we become a mom, we kind of like crank up the dial on this, right? Not only do we have to sacrifice, but almost like motherhood is martyrdom. If you're not martyring yourself, are you even a good mom? Are you even doing it right? And the reality is that we have to sacrifice our needs early on in motherhood. How would we get up in the middle of the night? How would we take care of these babies? How would we do all the hard things that are required of us? So it's not a bad thing. I actually think this is a really wonderful part of being a woman. I love this part of me, how well I care for my relationships. But the reality is when we make our needs small in order to care for everyone else, and then we stay there. So we stay there for the first couple years because they got the little kids and they're really demanding. Their needs are intense. I always say like our kids are like auctioneers with their needs, right? We keep them small, but then we go 2 years and 4 years and 5 years and 18 years. We get to a place where we're like, I don't even know what I need anymore. I don't even know what I like to do. I don't even know who I am. We can't even get in touch with these needs. This is when burnout happens. This is when resentment starts to develop. I've been on a lot of podcasts and a lot of Christian podcasts too, and they're like, well, what about we're supposed to be selfless? Absolutely. But when you are so selfless to the point where your heart hardens in your relationships, is that really what it's all about? When you're resentful and angry and you're walking around the house muttering to yourself all the things you wish people would do for you, or when we get to that place, is that really where we're supposed to be? So it's important to understand that when our needs are backburnered for so long and we don't make little adjustments, this is when resentment, burnout, and overwhelm is really going to come out. The second is idealization of motherhood, and the conflict is my ideal versus my reality. Can somebody tell me about an ideal they took into motherhood? I mean, I shared mine, so now it's your...
Every Saturday morning would be like perfect family breakfast time. Everyone's sitting down together.
And what does it really look like for you?
Oh my gosh, it's chaos. Our 2-year-old now,
Yeah.
she will ask for pancakes, and as soon as you get her pancakes, she's like, I don't want this. And then when we're all done eating, she's like, I want pancakes now. And I'm like, we just had those. And she's upset because they're cold, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, what do you want? And then
That's
also Christmas too. Like, I always thought Christmas would be like this big thing, like she'd be so excited, but like she'll open one present and all of a sudden she like it's like she's out of space.
like playing with it, or it doesn't even matter?
She doesn't even bother with the other presents. She's like totally like she was like that during Halloween too.
Yeah.
Like she got a couple pieces of candy and after that she was fine petting dogs the rest of the night. My husband and I were like, no, we want to eat your candy, get more candy.
So relatable. Yeah. What about anyone else? Yeah. Oh. It's never like... I have a 7 and 10-year-old, and I'm clearly doing it wrong, because our bedtime is like, our tuck-in is like an hour. I'm like, what is going? He's like, can you rub my feet? Can you do? And I'm just imagining like his future wife, like, what did your mom do? She rubbed her feet every night? What did you do to me? Oh my gosh, anyone else? Yeah. Oh. I don't understand the people whose kids are like tastefully dressed in neutrals. I know. I like... Is it like you're just like in flesh tone clothing all the time? It's...
They're like doing something to like manipulate their children. No offense to anyone who gets their kids to do that, but sorry. No offense. However, let me say
it's abusive. Well, it's funny because I was looking back at pictures of our kids. You know how we do that. We're like, oh, I just want to get emotional and look at pictures. Our kids were so well dressed when they were little. It's like there's that transition time and you don't have control. Well, as you mentioned early on, I'm on Instagram, and it's like it's a blessing for me, and it's a curse, and I have mixed feelings about it. But I also am kind of like a student of it. I analyze things, and I have recognized that there is always a certain post that performs really well on Instagram, and it is a picture of a mom crying. Have you seen these? Yeah. Pictures are kind of back, so we're probably going to see more of them again. Pictures of mom crying. She's either in one of two locations. She's either sitting in her car outside the grocery store, and you can see like a car seat, maybe the kid's like freaking out, and the car seat blurred a little bit in the back, and it's like up close on her face. Or she's sitting in the bathroom with the door locked alone. It's always those two spots. Also because the grocery store is a nightmare with young kids. So I get it. I've cried a million times outside the grocery store. So why is this a post that performs really well? My belief is because we are repeatedly told that motherhood is magical. And when we're in motherhood and it's not feeling so magical and we see something like that, we're like, oh, I'm not alone. This is a reprieve from that sort of inner conflict of what I thought it would look like versus what my reality actually is. Here's the thing that you need to understand is when there is a mismatch between your ideals and your reality, that gap between is where feelings of falling short, guilt, and shame, and all of the yucky sort of stuff lives. So part of it is understanding that you can have two kind of conflicting realities at the same time. Motherhood is magical, also it's really hard. Motherhood is beautiful, and also it's exhausting. But when we don't really call this out, and we're managing these conflicting realities without any direction or understanding or framework, it uses a lot of energy and bandwidth. And moms, we don't have tons of energy to spare. The third conflict is around intensity of our parenting standards. I must parent perfectly versus I must just be a good enough parent. There was this baby center study. I talk about it in my book, and originally the stat was 80%, but I had to go revisit all of my citations and make sure everything was correct. And the study had been redone, and it had moved up to 83%. And what it found was that 83% of moms said it was important to them to be the perfect mother. Now, it sounds kind of bananas, right? Like, really? We're good enough. Like, we're told that every day. It really has sunk in, right? So, but we're repeatedly seeing how many moms think it's important to them to be the perfect mom. So let me ask you this. I'm going to ask you a few questions. Raise your hand if it applies to you, and then keep it up. How many of you have ever worried you've been judged about what you feed your kids? Okay, we're almost done, actually. Okay, how many of you have worried, keep them up, that maybe you have already caused like a micro trauma for your kids? How many of you have worried that you've like lost it one time, you like lost your cool, and then you left a forever impact on your child? Yeah. So every time I've done this, I have never seen, well, actually there was one person who didn't raise her hand. I will never forget that woman. She just gave me a stink eye my whole talk. But every time, everyone's hand is up. So we can say it's kind of ridiculous to try to be a perfect mother, but at the same time, we're sort of holding ourselves to these standards that really approach perfection. What this means is that there is a whole lot of opportunity to feel like we're getting it wrong. So this really colors our parenting experience if we're holding ourselves to these standards and expectations that are up here. I just say this as a side note, and that's, and I know it might be reassuring or it might be disturbing, but nobody leaves childhood without something. And the reason why is because there's a difference between intention and interpretation. We can parent with all of the best intentions, but we can't control how our kids interpret us. We can do our best to kind of like mitigate it and manage it, but at the end of the day, it's a bit out of our hands. Okay, so in 1996, there was a researcher. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly. Her name was Sharon Hayes, and she came up with the term intensive mothering. And when I found this research, it was such an aha moment for me. There are 5 components that make up intensive mothering. So I want you to just hear these and be like, oh, see if they resonate with you. The first is essentialism, and this is the belief that moms are the best ones for the job. Maybe we are. I don't know. I'm like, my husband's home with the kids. I don't know if they're going to be eating anything this morning. But the belief, if we have the belief that moms are the best ones for the job, what does that mean? That means a couple things. Probably we're going to have a hard time asking for help. We're probably going to have a hard time involving other people. Or if our choices or circumstances are such that we like put our kids in daycare, or we do have a sitter, or we do have help, we're sort of internally going to be feeling like we're subjecting our kids to second-rate care. And that's going to conjure up all sorts of guilt and shame. This belief is really powerful if you subscribe to it. The second is fulfillment or fulfilling. This is the belief that we must be fulfilled by motherhood, like it's sort of like that last step in becoming self-actualized. And for some people it is, and for some people it's not. But when you believe that it should fulfill you in these really deep and meaningful ways, and you're not getting that fulfillment, again, that ideal versus reality, you're going to have all these feelings of like, what's wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? Why am I not the mom I thought I'd be? The next is stimulation. This one always cracks me up because it's reinforced daily on social media. But this is the idea that we have to provide a regularly stimulating, developmentally appropriate Montessori playroom for our children at all times. Oh, Timmy's reading and he's only 3, right? You know what I'm talking about? You're like, goodness gracious. My child only plays with whittled wooden toys. You know what I mean? Like this sort of thing where it's just like ridiculous amounts of pressure to constantly be helping our kids develop at this rapid pace and provide them with these environments that are always stimulating, always entertaining. My daughter, I did a reel about this in a flap. Her favorite toy is an ace bandage. So I just want you to know, and she's 10, and it's been that way since she was 3. She makes pulley systems and like, we got to tone it down a little bit with worrying about how much we need to like provide the stimulation for our kids. Okay, child-centered, that children are at the center. Everything revolves around them, which is a shift from previous generations to believe that we operate this way. And the last one is that it should be challenging, sort of like motherhood and parenthood should be really hard. And I see these messages too on social and other places, is like, if you're doing it and it's hard, you're doing it right, and probably some truth to it, but like also, does it need to feel hard for you to be doing a good job? So the belief in these 5 areas has a dramatic impact on how you experience motherhood. So when this woman, Sharon Hayes, researched it, she found some kind of like depressing findings, but there's silver lining. She found that motherhood was temporarily related to higher rates of anxiety, depression, and lower rates of life satisfaction. That's the depressing side. But when she dug into the research and she pulled out these 5 areas of intensive parenting, and it's called you control for them, what she found was that it's not motherhood that has a direct impact on these negative outcomes. It was actually the belief in these 5 areas that led to these direct negative outcomes. So if you change your relationship with these 5 areas, you can change your experience in motherhood. It becomes empowering. It sort of defines these things that then we have some control over, some things that we can do differently. I'm not sure, actually. I would have to look at the article again. Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah, like the higher levels. Absolutely. I'd have to look at her scales. So what is the answer? A lot of times we might think, okay, so the answer is that if I am really wrestling between my needs and the needs of everyone and everything else, I should just be about my needs. Put yourself first, right? No, I don't think that's the case. I think we don't need to go first, we need a turn. Or is it that my ideals and my reality need to really be the same? Or do I need to have no ideals anymore? No, it doesn't need to be so extreme. Do I need to parent intensely or good enough? No, it's not that you need to find the perfect balance. And I'm going to tell you why? Because balance is sort of this myth that we've been fed. But instead, we need to find a blend. We need to be able to make adjustments and move back and forth. Sometimes we're going to be all about the needs of our kids. I've got birthdays coming up for my kids, Christmas. It's going to be all about the kids for a little bit. And then I'm going to have to recalibrate and make some adjustments. Sometimes your kid might be going through something, and you're going to parent really intensely because that's what they need. And sometimes you're going to be like, you know what? Good enough for right now. So I want you to hear me that I'm not saying it has to be either or, but that we have to find a blend. We have to really recognize that finding the perfect balance is actually unobtainable because life is going to regularly mess you up. It's always in motion. If there's one thing that's predictable about life, it's that it's unpredictable. It's going to throw you out of balance, even the good things. I say the best example of this is having kids. Like, what a blessing having a baby is and having a family, but it's kind of inconvenient. Okay, good stuff throws us out of balance all of the time. So I want you to hear me very clearly that balance is total baloney. However, so we can get on board, life's going to mess you up. It's going to throw your life out of balance. We're going to be pulled to disconnection in our relationships. Motherhood disconnects us from ourselves a bit. Parenthood disconnects our relationship with our partner a lot of times. So if we can get on board with that, the second piece to it is, but also your relationships don't autocorrect. Sometimes we think they will. Sometimes we're like, honey, I'll get to you when the kids go to college, and I'm sure we'll be fine. But that's not how it really works. And we feel this most strongly when we have one baby, and then we are pregnant with our second, and we have that anxiety of what? I'm going to lose my relationship with the first. And inevitably, when our second is born, or our third, or whatever, you do feel that distance. You do feel that, we don't have as much special time. You feel it, so what do? You do something about it. I'm going to carve out a little time. I'm going to get on the floor. We're going to build with Legos. We're going to do the thing to build that connection. So we easily see how to do this with others in our life, with our kids especially, but also this applies to our relationship with ourself and motherhood. We're going to become disconnected from us, but we're not going to autocorrect. So what are you going to do about it? And so I assert to you that part of what we need to do is we need to be managers of our relationship with ourselves. And I know that's super annoying for me to say that because we are already the master managers of all of the people and all of the things in our life. Like, we don't need more to do. But I want to encourage you today to think about how you can mother yourself like you mother your kids. If you think about all the things we do for our children, we teach them, especially in our age of parenting, let's identify your emotions. Let's get really good at understanding them and expressing them. Let's talk about how you can assert your needs and stand up for yourself and set your boundaries. Let's talk about how you can honor and love your body and care for it deeply and in meaningful ways. Let's talk about how you prioritize things and how you regulate yourself. We do all this for our kids. We also need to do these things for ourselves. We have the skill sets. We need reminded, and we need a little bit of know-how in terms of how it applies to us. So when I say manage your relationship with yourself, it's always like crickets because people are like, huh? So let me make it clear. This is what you manage. This is what the foundation of my book is, and it's called the Relationship Attachment Model. My dad developed this back in the 80s, and it's been researched by different universities. It was the foundation of my dissertation. It's in textbooks, so I didn't scribble it on a napkin before I got here. So this is a picture of relationship and 5 connecting bonds that exist in every relationship. You can apply this to your relationship with your kids, your relationship with your partner. We have a whole series. It applies it to the relationship with God, but it also applies to your relationship with yourself, how well you know yourself, how you see yourself. Do you see yourself in a positive light? How you express and assert and meet your needs, how you manage your priorities, how you take care of your body in meaningful ways. When we understand that these are the 5 connections we're managing, we can be prompted to do self-check-ins where we take a moment and we almost do like an assessment, a self-assessment. How am I doing in each of these areas? This is what I walk through in the book. And once I assess and define what is feeling off, what is feeling wrong, I can be targeted in how I care for myself. Does that make sense? Take a moment. How am I doing in these 5 areas? I know I'm giving very surface for this one. Now, what can I do to actually make a quick adjustment? And here's the thing. If you don't have the time to do the things that you need to do to feel better in that moment, at least you're defining that invisible experience that feels so hard, and that will take some of the pressure off. So either you define it and you do something about it, or you define it and you put a pin in it for later, but both of those things will be incredibly powerful and helpful. So let me show you how this model works, but I'm going to apply it to your relationship with your partner after your first child was born. So I'm going to move the levels, and you tell me when to stop. First baby, into your marriage. How well do you know each other? Tell me. What? You're going to have to talk louder. Higher? You think? So you think after you bring the first baby home, you guys are like, I really knew exactly how you'd be as a mom. I knew exactly how you'd be as a dad. Say it again. Oh, you're like, in order to have the baby, you've got to know each other. No, this is that transition time. Like right around here? That's kind of generous. What's like somewhere in this range? We can turn it. Does that feel good? Okay. Now, trust, I'm going to get into trust, but trust is your, kind of like your opinion about someone, your belief in them, your confidence. When you get into bad attitudes with your partner, it's all in this area. So how are you seeing your partner? What's your belief in them, your confidence in them? Yes. After the baby's born. I know. It's super easy to get into a bad attitude. It's especially when you're tired. Yeah, we're like way down here. This is how you meet each other's needs? No. It's like you have, it's another conversation, but new needs arise after you become a mom that you didn't even know you had, or your needs intensify a lot of times.
I don't know, like, I think my husband sounds like he felt like he's a saint, but like, there are times where I want to square up with him, but
Yeah.
he's like super reliable.
See, that's amazing. So yours would look different.
Like when I was telling him I had lower back pain, he sent me a link off from Amazon for a pregnancy belt. He was like, "Do you want me to buy this for you?" And I was like, "Yes."
Get out of here. You're not welcomed. I'm just joking. That's amazing. Well, that's the thing. That's amazing. Well, and this will look different for everybody's relationship, right? And so this may have been like, we're all good here. Like, he's got me, right? Which would naturally strengthen your attitude towards him and all sorts of things. So they all start to work together. What about your commitment? Commitment to one another, like, pretty high, right? I feel like this is what's keeping you there. This is like the lead dog in your relationship. It's like, if we weren't married, I would be so out. Okay, yeah, so this keeps you in. What about touch? Yeah, we're done. Yeah, we're done. Okay, you did this. How dare you? Okay, so this is what I want you to see. A couple of things. Do you see how this relationship could be vulnerable if it stayed here for years? Do you see how you would start to develop a disconnection from one another? Yeah. If you stayed here for 18 years, you become the couple that's like, we just fell out of love. We just grew apart. Now, if we're not going to, but mapped out your relationship with yourself after having a baby, it would look kind of all over the place too. I don't even know who I am anymore. I don't even see myself well anymore. I'm not meeting any of my needs. I guess I'm prioritizing things, but maybe not that great. You would start to see where the vulnerabilities are and what you can start to do to recalibrate your relationship. Does that make sense? So in the book, I walk through the self-check-in. There's questions in the book, and there's lots of practical things you can do that aren't just bigger picture stuff in the moment, a lot of times alongside your kids, because we don't always get to step away to take care of ourselves. So I want to then give you a little bit more of a deep dive on trust, and then we'll wrap it up, because I think I could go on for ages. How am I doing? It's so nice you have a clock up here. Okay, so trust is going to start a little bit heady, but I'm going to tell you a couple stories to help bring this concept to light. But this concept can be really important and powerful in motherhood and really all of our relationships. Okay, so trust is defined as a feeling of confidence, hang in there with me, that comes from your belief or opinion about what you know about someone or yourself. This sounds like riddles, I realize. The feeling then develops into your attitude toward another person or even yourself. So let me break it down for you. When you get to know somebody, we'll use someone else because it's easier, you get to know factual things about them. But then you have opinions or judgments about all of the things you get to know, right? You're like, if you go on a blind date, for example, and you're like, they're a lawyer, then you have all these opinions and stereotypes and ideas of what that means. And so this starts to form into something called a trust picture. So you get to know something factual, you have opinions or judgments about it, and then you start to sketch a mental picture of that person, not based on the facts, but based on the opinions about what you get to know. Is this making sense? You think of it like a caricature. You know how we do that of presidents and we highlight certain qualities and minimize others? Like Trump would have crazy hair, Obama's ears would be really big. We focus in on certain things, so we highlight some things and minimize others. Have you ever had an interaction with your partner, if you're in a relationship, where they just are about to say something and you jump to a conclusion about what they're going to say, and they're like, that's not what I was going to say? Do you know what I'm talking about? That is you interacting with this trust picture in your mind. It's you filling in all the gaps. Because as you sketch this trust picture, it shapes your assumptions, your judgments, how you behave towards certain things. It becomes incredibly powerful. So our trust picture begins with what we know factually, It's heavily influenced by what you focus on and your opinions about what you get to know. It shapes your attitudes toward yourself and others. And it's the lens that impacts predictions, interpretations, assumptions, judgments, and behavior. We sketch a picture of ourselves too. This is our self-concept, how we see ourselves. If you think about your picture of yourself right now, what are you highlighting and what are you minimizing? Depends on probably how your morning went, I bet, right? If I lost it on my kids this morning, my picture's gonna look a heck of a lot different than if I had a real nice, beautiful morning with the kids. The last point about the trust picture is the most important. It's something that you are largely in charge of. You have control of how you sketch it. Okay, so let me give you an example. I have a son, so I have Effie is our daughter, she's 10 now, and then Roy's our son, and he's 7. And from about the age of 4 to 6 3/4, and it happened like a few weeks ago when we were in a bad spot. But he would do this thing when it came to going to the bathroom, where he would go from 0 to 100 and completely make her head spin. It would sound like this: Mom, I have to go potty. I'd be like, okay, buddy, whatever. And then go, no, I really have to go potty. Mom, I have to go potty. Mom, I have to go potty. Mom, take me to the potty. Mom, take me to the potty. I hate you. Like, oh my gosh. I would be like fire drill, like carrying him under my arm to the potty, like throw him in there, pull the pants down, put him on the potty, freaking out, sweating. And here's the thing, sometimes it would happen like 5 times in a row. He'd get off the toilet, pull his pants up. I have to go potty again. Why didn't you do that? Always my fault. Pull his pants down, put him back in the potty. I know you're like, how many times did he pee his pants? Never had an accident. Never had an accident. But gosh, going to the bathroom was always an emergency. And how would you feel as his mom? You'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm living with an abusive roommate. Right? That's what it felt like to be. His name's Roy. Our kids' names sound like they're elderly, but Roy, yeah, always felt like living with an abusive roommate. And this went on pretty intensely for a while. So let's think about the trust picture I could sketch of Roy. What do I know? I know that he freaks out about having to go to the bathroom, which sends me into a fire drill, and then he basically verbally abuses me, right? That's what I know. That's the facts. So I can sketch this picture of him as this tiny toilet tyrant, perched on his throne with his pants around his ankles, just spewing abuse at me, which a lot of us would. I mean, it's kind of tempting, kind of makes it a little bit funny. But if that was the picture that I sketched, how would I treat him? What would I say? As soon as he was like sitting on the toilet and I'm like standing at the bathroom door like, what would I say? Don't you dare talk to me that way. How dare you? You respect me. I am your mother. That is not how you talk to your mom. We're going to talk about this later. We have to figure out something out. What is your deal? Honestly, right? That's how we would respond. And kind of no one would really blame you because it's really intense. But here's the thing, and the concepts of my book integrate, but part of what we do is that we know our kids really well. We know them really deeply. And so based on what I know about Roy, I sketched the picture differently. Here's what I know. He is a highly sensitive kid. I've done a lot of reading about those. If you haven't, I suggest it. He has sensory issues. And when he feels the sensation of having to go to the bathroom, it comes out as anxiety, which anxiety is often expressed as anger. So I sketched my picture of him like that. He's a kid having a hard time, and I'm going to be calm and confident and firm, but I'm going to help him with this hard time. It's okay, bud. We'll make it to the potty on time. You don't need to worry. I've got you. I'm right here. Calm down. And then he would calm down, and you know what I'd almost always get? I am so sorry, Mom. I am so sorry. I know, bud. We'll get this eventually. But do you see how powerful that picture is? It shapes everything. So when you are sketching a picture of yourself in a hard moment, it's going to affect how you treat yourself, how you talk to yourself, And that impacts everything. I didn't realize Brene Brown said this. I wish I had, but I've been saying it for a while too, and then I was like, oh, that's hers. So it's the simple way of understanding it is the story I'm telling myself. That's the simplest way of understanding this trust picture. So where do we get the information about how we judge what we know? So I'm just going to quickly go through these. There's different sort of ways that we consume the information that affects our sort of like our shoulds. Like, my son should act a certain way, or I should be this certain type of mom, right? All of these shoulds come in, which affect the way we sketch our picture. And they come from three sources. The first is information consumption. This is like social media and blogs and movies and shows and all of the things that we really get our information from, all those vehicles. I remember talking to my mom, and I'm like, what did you do when you didn't know how to handle a parenting situation? And she's like, I just called my friend and did what she did. I was like, your friends were weird. Like, really? That's what you did? But how much simpler is that? Then we're like, well, this expert says this, and that expert says that, and I read that blog that said this, and then I read this parenting book, but I don't know if that's accurate, but then I saw this research study, right? We are bombarded with tons of information. It makes it super overwhelming, and it forms into all sorts of shoulds and expectations that we can judge ourselves against. The second is societal messaging. We absorb from society, much like when we go out in the sunshine, and our body absorbs the sun, and it makes vitamin D, and we're like, that happens and it's cool, but we don't understand the mechanics. Well, I don't understand, I'm sure some people do. But it's similar to societal messaging, which is that we're just living in a society and we're absorbing things that form these expectations and these shoulds, and we're not totally aware of them. They kind of just live inside of us. The third is early experiences. So what kind of caregivers did you have? What kind of expectations did they set for you? And what kind of mom and parent you'd be? What kind of partner your partner would be as a parent? All of these things shape us and the expectations and the shoulds that we have and we bring into motherhood. These form our expectations and standards around 4 areas of motherhood. So in the book, I try to lay out frameworks that make you not have to think so hard, because we already have enough on our minds. So I talk about 4 areas where these expectations really come out really strongly in motherhood, and they all begin with A. So attitude, which is your general kind of disposition in motherhood. I talked about in the beginning, I thought I would be like Mary Poppins, like chipper and happy and potentially singing a lot, right? So aptitude is the second. This is sort of how expert you'll be. This idea of mother's intuition fits here. Your appearance. Somebody shared how they had an ideal around appearance. And they're like, I know it's superficial. I was like, no, we all did. And we all do. We have a vision of what we think will look like in motherhood, whether it's how fast our bodies will return or not return, or how we dress, or even how we'll make motherhood look easy. We all have these visions around these things. And then last is activity, which is sort of like your energy. Energy did you expect to have in motherhood? What did you think you'd spend your time doing? When you start to explore some of the expectations that you have for yourself in these areas, you can start to really uncover them, put them on the table, and make some adjustments that better fit the reality of your life. Okay, so I want to walk through an example of how all of this sort of came together in a morning for me with the kids, because it becomes really important. I'm going to talk about how then you can really pay attention to your trust picture and make an adjustment in the moment that will be really helpful for you. This morning it makes me sweat. Okay, so there you remember the stretch with Roy going from 0 to 100 with the potty. There's another detail you need to know about my life, which is that I do a homeschool hybrid. So on Mondays and Fridays, I have the kids, and then the other days they go to a homeschool learning center, okay? So it's only 3 days. And if you plan on doing a 5-day school thing and you go to homeschool, you're sort of have to grieve that you're never getting those 5 days. So I was like, okay, it's great. I love this. This is a value for us. It's important to us, but also it's only 3 days. So There was this one particular morning with the kids, and I was determined to make this a really fun morning. I had planned to take them to breakfast. They knew they were going to breakfast. I got up early. I did the thing that we're supposed to do. I got up early, and I did my devotional, and I had my coffee, and I was looking out the window, and the birds were chirping, and the sun was shining, and I was like, this is going to be a great day. We're going to have fun. One of my favorite things to do in motherhood is create those like magical memory moments. And I was like, this is going to be one of those days, and it's going to be awesome. So Effie wakes up first. She always is a bit more of an early riser. And she sounds like a herd of elephants when she wakes up. I don't know if you have a kid like this. I'm like, how many doors do you have in your room? Because it's like every time she wakes up. We have a split level, so I'm upstairs, and the bedrooms are downstairs. And she comes walking up the stairs, and I know this ages me, but she looks like the character from The Ring. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like her hair's like in front of her face. She looks like she has no bones. Like she's just like, and she flops like a fish on the couch. I don't want to go to school. I'm like, what? Wait, no, this is like the best morning ever. What are you talking about? Oh, I don't want to go to school. I'm like, whoa, honey, we only go 3 days. Like, you got to kind of go to school. We get really behind. So she is full on, flopping like a fish on the couch, whining, and I'm already feeling my patience start to dwindle because I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. This was supposed to be tons of fun today. So then Roy wakes up. Roy wakes up the same way every day, and he still does it. I got him out of bed this morning, and he goes, I'm awake, from his room. I know. It's awesome. So my mom said, because she does not remember being a mom, apparently, she's like, why don't you just get him out of bed? Tell him to come out of his room. Like, why do you let him stay in there and yell, and then you have to go get him? Just tell him to come out. And I was like, you don't remember a thing. I could leave that kid in there until his 18th birthday, and he will not come out. It is a gift that he does not come out of his room. So I do the thing, I'm like, hey, bud. I open the door, I come out. He's like, Mom, I have to go potty. I'm like, oh, my gosh. Mom, I have to go potty. Take me to the potty. Take me to the potty. So now, again, room's downstairs. I scoop him up. Luckily, we have, like, bird bone children. I scoop him up. I'm running up the stairs, get him onto the potty. I'm like, whew, this is not the morning I imagined. So he goes on the potty, gets off, does the potty hysterics a second time. Finally, we get him situated. Effie, still on the couch, not dressed. I've asked 6,000 times. Not dressed, still complaining. So Roy comes off the potty, and he's kind of sleepy too. And he walks by, and I watch this. It's like a slow motion moment. He walks by, her legs kind of draped over the couch. And so he bumps it. She, like scary, like The Ring. And she does this thing. She still does it, so annoying, but very rarely now. She cocks her leg, pushes him. Yeah, we have like a soft ottoman. Thank God she like falls back. And I'm like, no. And he comes up, punches her. They're both screaming. I run over. What is going on? Stop. You know these moments? Tell me I'm not alone. I'm up here in my shame telling it. So I do the thing. This is the next layer of it. Ooh, I do a thing. I call it a monologue, where I start narrating all of my irritation. This was supposed to be a fun morning. I thought you guys knew we were going to breakfast. I was going to get you this really good breakfast. Now I don't know if we're going to even have time. I don't even know if I should take you to breakfast when you behave like this. Like, do you know what I'm talking about? As soon as I finish my monologue, immediate failure, immediate shame, immediate guilt rushes in. Oh, this is not the mom I want to be. So let's break down what's going on. The play-by-play is I had an ideal for the morning, and my reality was way different. There was a huge gap between my expectations that day. I had a running feed of Instagram experts swirling around in my mind about how I should have behaved, right? This is my aptitude and my attitude. I thought I should be chippery chipper that morning, even if it really was a hard morning. I should have held it together. I should know exactly what to say. I should have been more patient. I should have been more calm. I should have done this better and handled myself better. I became dysregulated. We were all dysregulated. A good mom, this is my society, kind of absorbing those informations, also the information consumption from all of the experts. A good mom wouldn't lose it on her kids. A good mom has endless patience and insight and empathy. So what is the result? I'm sketching my picture with all this information, all of these judgments. The result is I really suck at this motherhood thing. My expectations, my reality are far apart. My trust picture was highlighting all of the ways I was falling short. This is one of the main reasons why motherhood can feel hard in these moments. It's how we sketch this picture of ourselves, how we see ourselves, and then in turn, how we talk to ourselves. When we have those kind of mundane moments, we're just like hanging out with the kids, we're not doing anything, and we start shoulding ourselves. Oh, I should make this more stimulating. I should have more wooden toys. I should organize something. I should do, right? That picture we sketch of ourselves in those downtime moments are why they're sort of robbed of their joy, why we don't soak them in. When we have a moment alone by ourselves, and we're like, oh, a good mom would never leave her kids. A good mom wouldn't put her partner out in this way. A good mom wouldn't. That's why we feel guilt when we finally get that moment for ourselves alone. So this picture is powerful. The way that you see yourself really matters. So what do you do about it? It's actually quite simple. You zoom in or you zoom out, because what you focus on grows. We know in Philippians 4:8, we know that verse, right? Finally, it says brothers, but I'm just saying sisters. Whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely and admirable, anything that is excellent or praiseworthy, focus on such things. Think about such things. That's what we need to do. We can focus in on everything we're getting wrong, or we can zoom out and see all of the ways we're blessing and showing up for our kids. We're in control, remember, of how we sketch this picture. So we get to say what we do about it. There are helpful, zoomed in, and unhelpful zoomed in perspectives, same for zoomed out. You know the perspective of you only have 18 summers? Have you heard this one? That's a zoomed out perspective. Sometimes that's helpful. Sometimes you're like, whoa, I needed that. I needed to be reminded. And sometimes it's like, I don't need that in my life. Like, stop doing that to me. I'm soaking it in as much as I can. Don't make me feel bad on top of it. So we have to think about, what do I need to do right now? Do I need to zoom in on something different? Not the ways I'm falling short, but maybe the ways I repair, or the ways I do this, or the ways I bless my kids, or how I show up. Or maybe we need to zoom out and remember that our experience and our relationship with our kids, our success as a mother is not summed up by a singular moment, but by the composite of all of our moments with our kids. Always room for grace and repair. It's normal to feel frustrated sometimes. It's normal to have limited energy. It's normal to be out of balance, to be a bit in that disconnected space. So zoom in on a quality that's worthy of your attention, and out for perspective and renewed focus. So what did I do? I zoomed out. Okay, what's being stirred up in me right now? What's going on? I feel like I'm falling short. I shifted from I really suck to my kids are having a hard time this morning. Sometimes we attach our kids' behavior to whether or not we're doing a good enough job, and this will take you on a roller coaster ride in motherhood. We kind of have to cut those ties. But I was feeling that. So I don't suck. They're just having a hard time. They're filled with really big grumpy feelings. That's a normal human experience, kids being kids. I get grumpy sometimes. It's got nothing to do with me. I repaired. Part of why I repaired is because I have an expectation of myself as a mom who doesn't lose it on her kids and yell at them. And I didn't live up to that. And so that's a time where I wanted to make my reality closer to my ideal. And so I repaired. and move my expectations of myself back to the type of mother I want to be. We hit reset. We don't do this anymore. It's sad sometimes when you do things and then you don't ever do them again. You're like, I didn't know. But we hit reset. We used to do it on our noses. We're like, let's start over. Boop. We're going to begin the morning again because you can always begin again. And then I zoomed in on all that I did right to repair. I then accessed a mantra. I walk you through how to do this in the book that I use time and time again in motherhood that helps to center me after something kind of goes off balance, which is I'm a good mom who makes mistakes, and when I do, I have an opportunity to teach our kids how to repair mistakes. It's true. Our kids have to learn. We are not perfect. We're going to mess up. So in the moment, I want to encourage you to twist the aperture of your camera lens and how you are seeing yourself, because you have control over how you frame your perspective. I want to, can you click, I think, to the next slide? I put it in there. When I originally wrote this presentation, I kept going and going because I think I could talk forever. Can you go one earlier? I have a bunch of free gifts that I share with moms on my Instagram that can be really helpful. I put actually a lot of time and energy into these. And one of them is around mom guilt. Mom guilt is really related to the area of trust in our picture of ourselves. And so I have a whole guide that walks you through how to examine it and to revise it. And so it actually becomes either productive or you're not feeling the guilt you shouldn't be feeling. I also have one about how to talk to your partner about the mental load. So I want to let you know that those exist. They're free. Some of them are even in audio, so you don't even have to read if you would like them. And then the last one is my book that is available everywhere that goes more in depth into what I talked about today. So thank you so much for having me.